The little girl was ridiculed at school for not having a dad on Father's Day, until the millionaire CEO sat next to her and changed everything. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared up at the distinguished stranger beside her. His expensive cologne mixed with the gymnasium's stale air, creating an intoxicating scent of power and mystery. His manicured hands spoke of wealth beyond anything she'd ever known, and the way he carried himself commanded respect from everyone in the room. "Go ahead, sweetheart," he whispered encouragingly, his voice warm like hot chocolate on a winter morning. "Tell them about me." Every eye in the room watched as Lily struggled to find words. Madison's smug expression had vanished, replaced by confusion and a jealousy so obvious it made other parents shift uncomfortably. The banker's daughter had never encountered someone who could so effortlessly steal her spotlight. This is... Lily's voice trembled like autumn leaves in the wind. "I'm Robert," the man said smoothly, standing with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to boardrooms and power lunches. He extended his hand to Principal Henderson with the confidence of a man who had never been refused anything. "Robert Sterling, I apologize profusely for my tardiness. The quarterly board meeting ran considerably longer than anticipated." He pulled out a business card that made the principal's eyes widen in recognition. The embossed logo caught the gymnasium lights, and Lily could see other parents leaning forward, trying to get a glimpse of the name that had just silenced the entire room. Sterling Industries, one of the largest corporations in the state. A company whose name appeared on half the buildings downtown, whose charitable donations funded the new library, whose CEO was featured on magazine covers. "What makes your father special, Lily?" Principal Henderson asked, clearly flustered by this unexpected development. Her voice carried a new tone of respect, the kind reserved for major donors and influential board members. Lily looked up at Robert Sterling, this powerful stranger who had somehow known exactly when she needed rescuing. His eyes held a gentleness that seemed at odds with his commanding presence, and when he smiled at her, she felt something she'd never experienced before, the warmth of paternal protection. He came when I needed him most," she whispered, her voice carrying across the now silent gymnasium with startling clarity. The audience erupted in polite applause, but Lily barely heard it. Her mind raced with questions that seemed too large for her 8-year-old brain to contain. Who was this man? Why had he helped her? And why did something deep in her chest feel like it was awakening for the first time, a feeling she would later recognize as hope? After the ceremony, as families filtered out in clusters of laughter and conversation, Robert knelt to Lily's eye level. Up close, she could see tiny lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and worry, and a small scar on his chin that made him seem more human, less intimidating. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small wrapped box from his jacket. The wrapping paper was silver with tiny stars, and the ribbon was tied with the kind of perfection that suggested it had been done by professionals. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny star that caught the light and seemed to wink at her. "Every little girl deserves to feel special," he said gently, his voice carrying the weight of absolute sincerity. "Especially brave ones who face difficult situations with such grace." Lily's fingers trembled as she touched the bracelet. No one had ever given her jewelry before. In fact, no one had ever given her anything this beautiful, this expensive, this obviously chosen with care and thought. "But why?" she whispered, the question carrying all the confusion and wonder of a child who had never known such kindness from a stranger. Robert's eyes seemed to carry a deep sadness, like someone remembering a profound loss. "Because sometimes, when we help others, We help ourselves too, and because every child deserves to know they matter. Jean, before Lily could ask what he meant, her mother appeared, face flushed with panic and embarrassment, her waitress uniform still bearing the scent of coffee and fried food. "Lily, there you are! I'm so sorry I'm late. The diner was absolutely crazy busy today, and Mrs. Patterson called in sick, so I had to cover the whole lunch rush by myself, and—" She stopped short, seeing Robert Sterling rising to his full height, and something passed between the two adults that Lily couldn't understand. Her mother's face went pale as fresh snow, and Robert's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, like a man seeing a ghost from his past. "We need to talk," he said quietly to her mother, his voice carrying undertones that made Lily's stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. But what secrets were they hiding? And why did her mother look like she'd seen someone who was supposed to be dead? Maria Martinez clutched her waitress apron like a shield as she faced Robert Sterling in the empty school hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made the moment feel surreal and charged with electricity. 8 years had passed since she'd last seen him, but those piercing brown eyes were exactly the same. The eyes that had once promised her the world, then disappeared without a trace, leaving her pregnant and alone. "You can't be here," she whispered, glancing around to make sure they were alone. Her voice carried the desperation of a woman whose carefully constructed world was suddenly crumbling. "Not after all this time. Not now." "She's my daughter, isn't she?" Robert's voice was steady, but Lily could see the storm brewing beneath the surface, like thunder building behind distant clouds. "Look at her, Maria. She has my eyes, my stubborn chin. How could you not tell me?" Lily pressed herself against the wall around the corner, her heart pounding so loud she was sure they could hear it echoing down the hallway. The silver bracelet felt heavy on her wrist now, loaded with implications she didn't understand, but somehow felt in her bones. "No," Maria said firmly, but her voice cracked slightly. "You lost that right when you vanished, when you chose your precious company over us, when you decided that your reputation was more important than love." "I didn't know." Robert's composure cracked slightly, revealing the raw pain beneath his polished exterior. "If I had known you were pregnant, if I had known about Lily, you would have what? Married the poor waitress? Disrupted your perfect corporate image? Introduced your board of directors to your pregnant girlfriend from the wrong side of town?" Maria's voice trembled with 8 years of suppressed anger and pain, each word sharp as broken glass. "I called you, Robert. I left 17 messages. Your secretary told me you were unavailable for personal matters, and that I should cease any further contact attempts." Robert's face crumpled like a man receiving news of a devastating loss. "I never got those messages. I swear to you, Maria, if I had known, God, if I had only known." "It doesn't matter now. Lily doesn't know, and she never will. She's been through enough rejection and abandonment for one lifetime." Lily's world tilted on its axis, the hallway seeming to spin around her, this powerful, kind stranger who had rescued her from humiliation. Was her father? The father she'd dreamed about during countless sleepless nights, wondered about during every Father's Day, cried about in the darkness of her small bedroom while her mother worked double shifts. "Look at her," Robert pleaded, his voice breaking with emotion. "Look at what I saw in there. She's being bullied, humiliated. She sits alone while other children celebrate with their fathers. You're working yourself to death at that diner. And for what? Pride. Don't you dare judge how I've raised her," Maria snapped, her eyes flashing with the fierce protectiveness of a mother bear. "I've done the best I could with what I had. I've kept her fed, clothed, loved. I've worked 3 jobs to make sure she has a roof over her head and books to read. Don't you dare suggest that wasn't enough. I know you have, but I can do better for both of you now. I want to give her everything she deserves, the best schools, opportunities, a future without limits. I want to be the father I should have been from the beginning, No. Maria's voice was final, carrying the weight of years of hurt and self-protection. We don't need your guilt money. We don't need you sweeping in here like some white knight trying to fix what you broke. This isn't about guilt. It's about giving my daughter the life she deserves. It's about being responsible for my actions, even if I didn't know the consequences at the time. My daughter. The words echoed in Lily's mind as she slipped away on trembling legs, tears streaming down her face. Everything she thought she knew about her life was a lie. Her mother's late-night crying sessions, their constant financial struggles, the way other adults looked at them with pity. It all made sense now. But if her father was one of the richest men in the state, why had they been living in poverty? And what would happen if she told him she'd heard everything? 3 days later, Lily sat in the corner booth of Murphy's diner, pretending to do homework while watching her mother serve coffee to truck drivers and construction workers. The familiar smells of grease and coffee that had always been comforting now seemed suffocating, reminders of a life of limitation and struggle. The silver bracelet was hidden beneath her sleeve. She couldn't bring herself to take it off, but she also couldn't let her mother see it. The afternoon crowd was thin, just a few regulars nursing coffee and complaining about the heat. Mrs. Murphy, the owner, was in the back counting receipts and muttering about rising food costs. The oscillating fan in the corner pushed the humid air around without really cooling anything. The bell above the door chimed, and Robert Sterling walked in, looking completely out of place in his tailored charcoal suit among the vinyl booths and flickering fluorescent lights. Several customers turned to stare. His presence was like a peacock in a chicken coop, beautiful and utterly foreign. But he paid them no attention. His eyes found Lily immediately, and she saw something in his expression that made her heart skip. "Table for one?" Maria asked professionally, though her hands shook slightly as she grabbed a menu. She wore her professional mask, but Lily could see the cracks forming around the edges. "Actually, I was hoping to sit with my friend here," Robert said, sliding into the booth across from Lily with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Maria's face went white as paper. "Robert, no, we talked about this. I made my position clear." "Did we?" He smiled gently, but there was steel beneath the kindness. "Because I don't remember agreeing to abandon my daughter twice. Once was a mistake, twice would be a choice." Lily looked up from her math homework, trying to appear surprised, though her heart was racing. "Oh, it's you, the man from school, Mr. Sterling, right?" "That's right, sweetheart. How are you doing? How's school treating you?" "I'm okay." She fingered the bracelet beneath her sleeve, the metal warm against her skin. "Thank you again for helping me. It meant everything." Robert's eyes softened, and Lily saw something pass across his face, a mixture of love and regret so profound it took her breath away. "Lily, can I ask you something? What do you want to be when you grow up?" The question caught her off guard. Adults rarely asked her opinion about anything, treating her more like an inconvenience to be managed than a person with thoughts and dreams. I want to help people. Maybe be a doctor or a teacher, someone who makes a difference." "Those are wonderful dreams, very worthy dreams. Tell me, do you like school?" "I love learning," Lily said, her enthusiasm breaking through despite the tension at the table. "I love reading about different places and times. I love solving math problems and writing stories. But what? But school isn't always easy. Some kids are mean because we don't have much money. And my mom can't help with projects because she's always working." Robert's jaw tightened. "Those are wonderful dreams, Lily. Very expensive dreams, though, especially the medical school part." Maria appeared at their table, coffee pot trembling in her grip like a leaf in a storm. "Robert, please don't do this to her. Don't fill her head with impossible dreams." "Do what? Talk to her. Get to know her. Express interest in her future." His voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. "She's 8 years old, Maria. 8. And she's brilliant. I can see it in her eyes, in the way she talks about learning. She deserves every opportunity to reach her potential. We're fine on our own. We've managed this long." "Are you?" Robert pulled out his phone and showed them a news article with a headline that made Maria's face go ashen. "Downtown Revitalization Project displaces local businesses. This neighborhood is being rezoned for development. The diner's lease won't be renewed next month. Where will you go? What will you do? How will you afford Lily's education?" Maria sank into the booth beside Lily, the weight of their precarious situation suddenly crushing down on her like a collapsed building. I didn't know. Mrs. Murphy didn't tell us. Mrs. Murphy. "Let me help," Robert said quietly, reaching across the table. "Not as charity, as—" He couldn't say the word father. Not yet, not with so much unresolved between them. But Lily heard it anyway, felt it in the air like electricity before a storm. "There's a catch, isn't there?" Maria asked, her voice heavy with the cynicism of someone who had learned that nothing good came without a price. "There always is, with men like you." Robert was quiet for a long moment, studying his hands. When he looked up, his expression was troubled. "There's something you both need to know. Something that makes this situation more complicated than you realize." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a legal document, thick and official-looking. "I'm getting divorced, Maria. It's been in the works for months. But there's a custody battle involved. For a son I've barely been able to see because of my ex-wife's manipulation and legal maneuvering." Lily's eyes widened. She had a brother? Somewhere out there was another child who shared her father's eyes, her stubborn chin. If Victoria finds out about Lily, she'll use her as leverage. "She'll try to take both children away from me, or worse, she'll make your lives miserable just to hurt me. Victoria Sterling doesn't fight fair, and she has resources most people can't imagine." The weight of this revelation settled over the table like a storm cloud, heavy with the promise of thunder. Lily felt the fragile hope that had been building in her chest start to crack. Even having a father came with dangers she'd never imagined. But what they didn't know was that someone had already been watching them, someone with enough power and malice to destroy them all, and that someone was already making plans. Victoria Sterling sat in her pearl-white Mercedes outside Murphy's diner, watching through tinted windows as her soon-to-be ex-husband shared coffee with a waitress and a little girl. Her perfectly manicured fingers gripped the leather steering wheel until her knuckles went white, and her jaw clenched with the controlled fury of a woman who had just discovered the ultimate weapon. She'd hired the private investigator to find dirt on Robert for their divorce proceedings, affairs, hidden assets, anything that would give her leverage in court. But this was beyond her wildest expectations. A secret daughter. 8 years of deception. This was better than any affair, more damaging than any financial impropriety. Her phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer. "How much leverage do you need for the custody case?" Victoria smiled coldly as she typed back, "This will destroy him completely and give me everything I want." She took photos through the window. Robert leaning across the table, touching the little girl's hand, the waitress looking distressed. The intimate, family-like scene that would look so damning in court documents. Her son James would remain with her exclusively, and Robert would be painted as a man who abandoned one child and lied about another. Inside the diner, Lily excused herself to use the restroom, but instead slipped out the back door, needing air and space to process everything. The revelation about Victoria, about having a brother, about the danger they might be in, it was all too much for her 8-year-old mind to contain. The alley behind the diner was narrow and dark, filled with dumpsters and the harsh smell of grease and rotting food. It was here, in this forgotten space between buildings, that she did her best thinking. But today, the familiar refuge felt threatening. She didn't notice the woman in expensive clothes approaching until it was too late. "You must be Lily," Victoria said, her voice silk over steel, cultured and sharp as a blade. Lily looked up, startled. The woman was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way, like a knife wrapped in velvet. Her clothes probably cost more than her mother made in a month, and she moved with the predatory grace of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted. "Do I know you?" "I'm Victoria Sterling, Robert's wife." She said the word wife with particular emphasis, marking her territory. The world seemed to tilt. This elegant, terrifying woman was married to her father. I don't understand." "Oh, sweetheart." Victoria crouched down, but her smile never reached her ice-blue eyes. "There's a lot you don't understand. Did Robert tell you he already has a family? A real family?" Lily's heart started racing, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "He mentioned a son. My son, James, 12 years old, brilliant, accomplished, destined for greatness, everything a father could want in a child." Victoria's voice dripped poison with every word. "Tell me, dear, what could a man like Robert possibly want with a little bastard from the wrong side of town?" The word hit Lily like a physical blow. She'd heard it before, whispered by cruel kids at school, but never said so directly to her face by an adult. "Unless," Victoria pretended to think, tapping one manicured finger against her lips, "unless he's just playing games. Men like Robert, they collect things, trophies. Little broken birds they can fix to make themselves feel important. It makes them feel powerful, swooping in to save the day." "That's not true," Lily whispered, but doubt was already creeping in like fog through cracks in a wall. "Isn't it? Think about it, darling. If he really cared, where has he been for 8 years? Why did he only show up now, when it's convenient for him, when he needs to look good in court?" Victoria stood up, smoothing her designer skirt. "I'll give you some advice, little girl. Don't get attached. Men like Robert always disappoint in the end. They make promises they can't keep and abandon people when things get difficult." She started to walk away, then turned back with one final blow. "Oh, and Lily, if you think he's going to save you from your pathetic little life, think again. I'll make sure he never sees you again. And there's nothing a waitress and her bastard daughter can do to stop me. I have lawyers, money, and power you can't even imagine." Victoria disappeared around the corner, leaving Lily alone in the alley, her world crumbling around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. When she returned to the diner, she couldn't meet Robert's concerned eyes. How could she tell him that his wife had just threatened to destroy their lives? And worse, what if Victoria was right? What if this was all just a game to him? The silver bracelet felt like it was burning her wrist, a reminder of hopes that might be nothing but cruel illusions. That night, as Lily lay in her narrow bed in their tiny apartment, listening to her mother cry softly in the next room, she made a decision that would change everything. She had to find out the truth about Robert Sterling, even if it destroyed her in the process, but she had no idea that Victoria had already set a plan in motion that would tear apart everything her father was trying to build, and that her innocent desire for truth would put them all in more danger than she could possibly imagine. Lily waited until her mother's breathing became deep and even, then crept out of their apartment into the humid night air. She'd never been out alone after dark, but desperation drove her forward like a force beyond her control. She had to know the truth about Robert Sterling, about her father, before Victoria Sterling could destroy whatever chance they might have at being a family. The city bus that ran through their neighborhood was still operating, its tired engine coughing as it made its late-night rounds. Lily used the emergency dollar her mother kept hidden in her backpack to buy a ticket downtown, her hands shaking as she handed the crumpled bill to the bus driver. "You okay, kid?" the driver asked, noting her pale face and the lateness of the hour. "I'm meeting my dad," she said, which was technically true, though the driver looked skeptical. She pressed her face to the window. watching the neighborhoods change from rundown to pristine as they headed toward the business district. Broken streetlights gave way to manicured landscapes, chain-link fences transformed into decorative ironwork, and liquor stores became art galleries and boutique coffee shops. Sterling Industries occupied a gleaming 30-story tower that pierced the night sky like a glass needle, its upper floors glowing with light, even at this late hour. Lily stood on the pristine sidewalk, craning her neck to see the top, when a security guard in a crisp uniform approached. "Little girl, what are you doing out here alone?" "It's past midnight." His voice was kind but concerned, the tone of someone accustomed to dealing with lost children. "I need to see Mr. Sterling," she said with more confidence than she felt. "It's important. It's about family." The guard was about to dismiss her when the building's front doors opened with a soft whoosh, and Robert himself emerged, loosening his tie after another late night at the office. His expensive shoes clicked against the marble steps, and he looked exhausted, older somehow than he had that afternoon. His eyes widened when he saw Lily. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here? It's almost midnight. How did you get downtown?" "I took the bus," she said simply. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Robert looked at the security guard, who shrugged and stepped back to give them privacy. "Of course, anything. But first, we need to call your mother. She must be terrified. She doesn't know I'm gone. She thinks I'm asleep." Lily's voice was small but determined. "Are you really my father?" The question hung in the air between them like a loaded gun, heavy with implications and consequences. Robert's face went through a dozen emotions: surprise, pain, resignation, and finally a kind of relief that suggested he'd been waiting for this moment. "Yes," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I am." Lily felt her knees go weak. Despite suspecting it, despite overhearing the conversation, hearing it confirmed directly was overwhelming. "Why didn't you come before?" "Because I didn't know you existed until 3 days ago." Robert's voice carried the weight of profound regret. "Your mother tried to tell me, but I was a different person then, focused only on building my company, convinced that business was the only thing that mattered. I had walls up, barriers to protect myself from anything I saw as a distraction. So you didn't choose to leave us?" "God, no." Robert's eyes filled with tears that caught the streetlight. "If I had known about you, nothing would have kept me away. Nothing. I would have moved heaven and earth to be part of your life from the very beginning." Lily studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. All she saw was pain and regret, so deep it took her breath away. This powerful man, who commanded boardrooms and controlled millions of dollars, was crying because of her. "Your wife came to see me today," she said quietly. Robert's face went ashen, all the blood draining away. "Victoria, what did she say?" "She said you already have a real family, that I'm just a bastard from the wrong side of town." The words still hurt to say, like swallowing glass. Robert's hands clenched into fists, his jaw working with barely controlled fury. "That woman has no right to speak to you that way, no right to hurt you." "Is it true?" "About your son. Yes, I have a son, James. But Lily, listen to me." Robert knelt down and took her small hands in his large, warm ones. "James is my son, but you are my daughter. You're both my real family, just as real and just as important. The circumstances of your birth don't change that. Love doesn't recognize legal documents or marriage certificates. She said you collect broken birds to fix, that this is just a game to make you feel important. And what do you think? Do I seem like I'm trying to fix you?" Lily considered this, thinking about the gentleness in his eyes, the way he'd sat beside her in that gymnasium without being asked, the bracelet he'd given her with no expectation of anything in return. "No, you seem like you're trying to love me." "Because I am, because I do." Robert's voice was fierce with emotion, like a man making a vow. "You are my daughter, Lily Martinez, and I will spend the rest of my life making up for the 8 years I missed, if you'll let me." For the first time in her life, Lily felt what it was like to have a father's love, fierce and protective and unconditional. It was like standing in sunshine after a lifetime of shadows. But even as warmth flooded through her, a chill of fear followed. "What's going to happen to us?" she whispered. "Your wife said she'd make sure you never see me again. She said she has lawyers and money and power." Robert's expression hardened, transforming him from gentle father to steel-willed businessman. "Victoria's about to learn that there are some things worth fighting for, and you, sweetheart, are worth everything I have. But what if she wins? What if she takes you away? Then I'll keep fighting, and if the courts won't listen, I'll find another way, because that's what fathers do. They fight for their children no matter the cost." But as they stood outside the gleaming tower, neither of them noticed the photographer in the shadows across the street, capturing every moment of their emotional reunion with a telephoto lens. By morning, their picture would be on the front page of every newspaper in the state, and Victoria Sterling would have all the ammunition she needed to destroy them both. Maria Martinez woke to her phone buzzing incessantly at 6 in the morning. Through the thin walls of their apartment, she could hear Mrs. Chen from next door turning up her television and the sound of rapid footsteps in the hallway above. Something was wrong. "Maria, you need to see this." Her friend Sandra's voice was tight with worry. "Turn on Channel 7 News. Now." With trembling fingers, Maria switched on their ancient television. The morning news anchor's voice filled their tiny living room. "Breaking news this morning, as Sterling Industries CEO Robert Sterling was photographed in an intimate late-night encounter with an unidentified young girl outside his corporate headquarters." "Lotti." The photograph filled the screen. Robert kneeling before Lily, holding her hands, both of them emotional and clearly deep in conversation. To viewers who didn't know the context, it looked damning. The angle made Lily appear even smaller, more vulnerable, and Robert's gesture seemed almost predatory. Sources close to the Sterling family suggest this may be connected to the ongoing custody battle between Mr. Sterling and his estranged wife, Victoria Sterling, over their 12-year-old son, James. Maria's blood turned to ice. In the next room, Lily was just waking up, unaware that their private moment had become public scandal. The girl's identity remains unknown, but Channel 7 has learned she may be connected to a downtown diner where Sterling was also spotted yesterday afternoon. The doorbell rang, not their usual doorbell, but sharp, insistent knocking. Through the peephole, Maria saw a woman with a press badge and a man with a camera. "Mrs. Martinez, we're from Channel 7 News. We'd like to ask you some questions about your relationship with Robert Sterling." Maria's heart stopped. Somehow, they'd already found them. Her phone rang again, this time an unknown number, then another, and another. The voicemails were already piling up. Reporters, lawyers, people claiming to be from social services. Lily emerged from her bedroom in her faded pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Mom, why is there someone at the door so early?" Before Maria could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email, we need to talk." Robert. The email contained a single line. "Pack a bag, both of you. My driver will be there in 20 minutes, trust me." Maria stared at the message, her mind racing. Outside, she could hear more voices, more cars arriving. Their secret was out, and Victoria Sterling's war had officially begun. But as she looked at her daughter's confused face, she realized they were no longer fighting this battle alone. The question was, would Robert's protection be enough against his wife's fury? 20 minutes later, as a black sedan pulled up to whisk them away, Maria noticed the curtains in every window of their building twitching with curious neighbors. Their quiet life was over forever. But none of them knew that Victoria Sterling was already 3 steps ahead, and that the photograph was just the opening move in a game that would destroy everything they held dear. The Sterling mansion sat on 15 acres of manicured grounds in the most exclusive neighborhood in the state. As Robert's driver guided them through the iron gates, Lily pressed her face to the bulletproof window, trying to comprehend the scale of wealth she was witnessing. Marble fountains, perfectly trimmed hedges shaped like swans, and a circular driveway that could accommodate a dozen cars. "This is where you live," she whispered to Robert, who sat across from her looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. "This is where I used to live," he corrected gently. "Now it's just where I keep some of my things, and where James lives with his mother." Maria shifted uncomfortably in the leather seat. "Robert, I don't think this is a good idea. If Victoria sees us here—" "Victoria is in court filing emergency motions," Robert said grimly. "This may be my only chance to have James meet his sister before the lawyers make it impossible." As they approached the front door, a massive oak structure that looked like it belonged on a cathedral, it swung open to reveal a boy who looked like a younger version of Robert. James Sterling stood in the doorway, 12 years old and trying to appear older, his dark hair perfectly styled and his clothes expensive but casual. "Dad?" His voice cracked slightly, the way 12-year-old voices do. "Mom said you weren't supposed to come here anymore." "I know, son, but there's someone very important I want you to meet." Robert's voice was gentle but firm. "James, this is Lily. She's—" "Your daughter," James finished, his eyes narrowing as he studied Lily. "I know. I saw the news. Mom's been screaming about it all morning." Lily felt her cheeks burn. This sophisticated boy, with his designer clothes and his casual mention of seeing her humiliation on television, made her acutely aware of her own worn sneakers and second-hand jacket. "Hello," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. James looked her up and down, not unkindly but with the analytical eye of someone much older than his years. "You're smaller than I expected, and you look like Dad." "Is that bad?" Lily asked, genuinely uncertain. "No," James said, and for the first time, his carefully constructed facade cracked slightly. "It's just weird. I've been an only child for 12 years. Now suddenly I have a sister I've never met." Robert stepped forward. "James, I know this is confusing, but Lily is your sister and she's part of our family now." "Our family?" James's voice turned bitter. "What family? You and Mom are getting divorced. Mom spends all day with lawyers planning how to destroy you, and now there's this girl who's going to change everything." Lily felt tears prick at her eyes. She'd imagined having a brother would be wonderful, but James seemed to see her as a threat, another complication in his already fractured world. "I don't want to change anything," she said softly. I just wanted to have a dad." Something in her voice seemed to reach James. His expression softened slightly, and Lily caught a glimpse of the scared 12-year-old beneath the sophisticated exterior. "It's not your fault," he said finally. "It's just everything's been falling apart for months, and now Mom's acting like you're some kind of weapon she can use against Dad." "What do you mean?" Robert's voice sharpened. James glanced around nervously. "She's been on the phone with lawyers all morning. She keeps saying things like, 'This changes everything, and now we have leverage.' She's planning something big, Dad, something that's going to hurt you." Before Robert could respond, the sound of car doors slamming echoed from the driveway. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see Victoria Sterling stepping out of a black Mercedes, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. "She's back," James whispered, real fear creeping into his voice. "Dad, you need to go, if she finds you here with Lily." "I'm not afraid of your mother," Robert said, but his jaw was tight. "You should be," James replied. "She's been different since the divorce started, angrier, more dangerous. The front door burst open, and Victoria Sterling swept in like an avenging angel, her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer suit making her look like a warrior dressed for battle. "Get that child out of my house," she said coldly, her ice-blue eyes fixed on Lily. "And Robert, you just violated the restraining order." "Gentlemen, you're witnessing criminal trespass." One of the suited men stepped forward. "Mr. Sterling, I'm serving you with an emergency custody motion. You're forbidden from any contact with James until further notice." "You can't do this!" Robert's voice was dangerous now. "I can, and I have," Victoria smiled coldly. "And thanks to your little midnight rendezvous, I now have evidence of your questionable judgment and possible mental instability." She turned to James, her voice becoming sickeningly sweet. "Darling, go to your room. Mommy needs to talk to Daddy." But James didn't move. For the first time in months, he looked his mother directly in the eye. No. The single word hung in the air like a grenade. "What did you say?" Victoria's voice was barely controlled fury. "I said no. I want to meet my sister, and I want to hear what Dad has to say." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. "James, you don't understand what's happening here." "I understand more than you think," James said quietly, "and I understand that you're trying to use me as a weapon." The battle lines were drawn, but the war was just beginning, and Lily was about to discover that having a family meant fighting for it. The courthouse downtown was a monument to justice, all marble columns and soaring ceilings, but as Lily sat in the hard wooden chair beside her mother, it felt more like a tomb. They'd been waiting for 3 hours while lawyers in expensive suits shuffled papers and whispered among themselves like conspirators. Victoria Sterling sat across the aisle, looking like an ice queen in her pristine white suit. Her lawyer, a sharp-faced woman who reminded Lily of a shark, leaning in to whisper strategies. Every few minutes, Victoria would glance over at Lily with a smile that never reached her eyes. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honourable Judge Patricia Williams presiding. Judge Williams was a stern woman, in her 60s, her grey hair pulled back severely and her expression suggesting she'd seen every dirty trick lawyers could devise. She settled behind her bench and studied the documents before her. "This is an emergency hearing regarding custody modification in the matter of Sterling versus Sterling," she began. "Mrs. Sterling, your attorney has filed some very serious allegations." Victoria's lawyer stood, her voice crisp and professional. "Your Honour, we have evidence that Mr. Sterling has been engaging in secretive and inappropriate behavior with an unidentified minor child. This behavior demonstrates a pattern of poor judgment that directly impacts his fitness as a parent." And she gestured to a large screen where the photograph from the newspaper appeared. Robert kneeling before Lily outside his building, both of them emotional. "This photograph was taken at nearly midnight, Your Honour. A grown man meeting secretly with a young girl in a deserted area. When confronted about this relationship, Mr. Sterling has been evasive and hostile." Lily felt her cheeks burn as dozens of people in the courtroom studied the image. Out of context, she could see how it might look suspicious. Robert's lawyer, a distinguished older man named Harrison Wells, stood to object. "Your Honour, Mrs. Sterling's characterization is deliberately misleading. The child in question is irrelevant," Victoria's lawyer interrupted. "The point is that Mr. Sterling's judgment is clearly compromised. He's making midnight rendezvous with minors and bringing unknown children into contact with his son, James." Judge Williams studied the photograph carefully. "Mr. Sterling, what is your relationship with this child?" Robert stood, his face pale but determined. "Your Honour, the child is my daughter." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Victoria's lawyer smiled like a cat who'd caught a particularly fat mouse. "Your daughter, Mr. Sterling?" But you testified under oath during these divorce proceedings that you had only one child, James Sterling. Are you now admitting to perjury? I was not aware of her existence at the time of my previous testimony, Robert said firmly. I recently discovered that I have a daughter from a previous relationship. A relationship you concealed from these proceedings, Victoria's lawyer pressed. A child you've hidden for 8 years. This demonstrates a pattern of deception that goes to the heart of Mr. Sterling's character. Judge Williams looked troubled. Mr. Sterling, why didn't you report this discovery to the court immediately? I was trying to establish a relationship with my daughter and protect her from. Robert glanced at Victoria. From potentially harmful situations. Harmful situations? Victoria's lawyer pounced. Are you suggesting that Mrs. Sterling poses a threat to children? I'm suggesting that my ex-wife has demonstrated vindictive behavior and... Objection! Victoria's lawyer was on her feet. Mr. Sterling is making unsupported accusations. Sustained, Judge Williams said. Mr. Sterling, stick to facts. Maria squeezed Lily's hand as the legal battle raged around them. This wasn't about justice or what was best for children. This was warfare, and they were the ammunition. Your Honor, Victoria's lawyer continued, we're also concerned about Mr. Sterling's judgment in bringing this child and her mother, a woman of limited means and questionable background, into contact with James Sterling. The influence on our client's son could be significant. The words hit Lily like physical blows. Questionable background. Limited means. They were talking about her mother like she was some kind of criminal. Furthermore, the lawyer pressed on, we have evidence that Mr. Sterling has been providing financial support to this woman and her child, possibly in exchange for... That's enough! Robert's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. You will not impugn the character of my daughter or her mother. Mr. Sterling, Judge Williams warned, you will control yourself in my courtroom. But Victoria was smiling now, satisfied. She'd accomplished exactly what she'd set out to do, make Robert look unstable, make Lily and Maria look like opportunists, and paint herself as the protective mother looking out for her son's best interests. Your Honor, Victoria's lawyer said smoothly, in light of these revelations, we're requesting immediate suspension of Mr. Sterling's custody rights pending a full investigation into his relationship with this child and his fitness as a parent. The courtroom seemed to tilt around Lily. They weren't just trying to keep Robert from seeing James. They were trying to keep him from seeing her, too. Judge Williams was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents before her. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with the weight of decision. Given the serious nature of these allegations and the need to protect the welfare of all children involved, I'm ordering a temporary suspension of Mr. Sterling's custody rights pending a comprehensive investigation by Child Protective Services. Lily felt the world collapse around her. After just finding her father, was she about to lose him again? But as the gavel fell and the courtroom erupted in whispers, none of them noticed James Sterling slipping out through a side door, a determined look on his young face. The 12-year-old had a plan of his own. James Sterling had been invisible in his own house for months, a ghost moving through marble hallways while his parents destroyed each other with lawyers and accusations. But being invisible had its advantages. It meant adults didn't notice when you listened at doors, when you accessed their computers, when you discovered the secrets they thought were safely hidden. Tonight, as his mother celebrated her courtroom victory with expensive champagne and phone calls to her society friends, James sat in his father's home office, staring at documents that changed everything. The private investigator's report was damning, but not in the way Victoria had intended. James had found the original file, not the sanitized version presented to the court. The investigator had dug deep into his mother's background, and what he'd discovered painted a very different picture than the grieving, protective mother she portrayed in public. Victoria Sterling hadn't always been Victoria Sterling. 20 years ago, she'd been Victoria Chen, a struggling actress with mounting debts and a reputation for manipulating wealthy men. The file contained photographs, financial records, and witness statements that told a story of calculated deception spanning decades. But the most damning evidence was a series of email exchanges between Victoria and her lawyer from 6 months ago, months before the custody battle began. They'd been planning to destroy Robert's reputation all along, using James as leverage to extract the maximum possible settlement. The key is to make him look unstable, one email read. If we can document any behavior that suggests poor judgment or potential danger to James, we can argue for supervised visitation only. With full custody, I control his access to his son and his money. James felt sick as he read his mother's clinical analysis of how to manipulate the legal system, how to use him as a weapon against the father he desperately wanted to love. But there was more. The investigator had also looked into the messages Maria Martinez had left 8 years ago, the ones Robert claimed never to have received. The truth was worse than negligence. Victoria had been intercepting Robert's personal communications for years, using her access to his home office to monitor and control his relationships. She'd known about Lily. She'd known about Maria's pregnancy. And she'd deliberately kept Robert from learning about his daughter to maintain her position as the only woman with children in his life. James printed the documents with shaking hands. His 12-year-old mind struggled to process the magnitude of his mother's deception, but one thing was clear. His father was innocent, and his half-sister was in danger. The next morning, as Victoria prepared for another day of legal maneuvering, James made a decision that would change everything. He called Lily. "Hello?" Her voice was small and scared when she answered her mother's phone. "Lily, it's James, your brother. I need to see you. And I need to see Dad. I have something that's going to change everything." But the judge said, "The judge was lied to. My mother has been lying to everyone, but I have proof, and I'm going to make sure the truth comes out." "Where can we meet?" James thought for a moment. "Do you know where Lincoln Elementary is? Where you first met Dad?" "Of course. Meet me there at 3 o'clock, in the gymnasium, and bring Dad if you can. It's time the adults knew what Victoria Sterling is really capable of." As James hung up the phone, he heard his mother's voice echoing from downstairs, already planning her next move in the legal chess game she'd been playing for years. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated her own son. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, in the same gymnasium where Robert had first sat beside Lily, 3 generations of Sterlings would finally confront the truth that had been hidden for 8 years. But Victoria Sterling wasn't done fighting. And when she discovered her son's betrayal, her fury would make everything that had come before look like a gentle breeze before a hurricane. The final battle was about to begin, and this time, the stakes weren't just custody or money. They were the future of a family that had already lost too much time. The Lincoln Elementary Gymnasium felt different in the late afternoon light, the same space where Lily had faced her deepest humiliation and found her greatest hope now stood silent, the basketball hoops casting long shadows across the polished floor. But today it would become the battleground where truth finally confronted lies. James arrived first, clutching a manila folder that contained his mother's carefully hidden secrets. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the magnitude of what he was about to unleash. At 12, he was about to destroy his mother's life, but he'd come to understand that some lies were too dangerous to protect. Robert appeared in the doorway with Lily and Maria, all 3 of them moving carefully, aware that they were violating court orders simply by being together. The legal system had painted Robert as dangerous, But looking at him now, this man who radiated love and protection when he looked at his daughter, James wondered how anyone could believe such lies. "James," Robert's voice was heavy with concern. "Son, you shouldn't be here. If your mother finds out—" "She's going to find out anyway," James said, his voice steadier than he felt, "but not before everyone else knows the truth." He opened the folder and spread the documents across the gymnasium floor like cards in a deadly game. "Dad, you never got the messages about Lily because Mom intercepted them. She's been monitoring your personal communications for years." Robert's face went white as he examined the email printouts. "These are from Victoria's account." "She knew about Lily from the beginning," James continued, his voice gaining strength. "She knew Maria was pregnant, she knew you had another daughter, and she deliberately kept you from finding out because it threatened her position." Maria sank onto one of the bleachers, her face crumpling. 8 years, 8 years of struggling alone, of watching Lily wonder why her father didn't want her, and she knew all along. "There's more," James said grimly. He pulled out another set of documents. "The custody battle wasn't about protecting me. It was about money and control. Mom's been planning to destroy your reputation for months, Dad. She wanted to make you look unstable so she could get full custody and maximum alimony." Lily looked up from studying a particularly damning email exchange. "She said in court that she was protecting you from us, but she was really protecting herself from losing money." "Exactly." James's voice carried a bitterness no 12-year-old should possess. "I've been a weapon in a war I didn't even know was being fought. And when Lily appeared, Mum saw another opportunity to hurt you." Robert was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents that revealed the depth of his ex-wife's manipulation. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "James, do you understand what you're giving me? This evidence could destroy your mother in court. She could lose everything, her reputation, her settlement, possibly even her freedom if the fraud charges stick." "I know," James said simply, "but she's been destroying our family for years, and she was going to keep destroying it until there was nothing left. She's still your mother." "No," James's voice cracked slightly. "A mother protects her children. She uses them. There's a difference." Lily stood up and walked over to her half-brother, this boy who was willing to sacrifice everything to protect a sister he'd just met. "James, if we use this evidence, what happens to you? Where will you live?" "With Dad, I hope, if he'll have me." James looked uncertain for the first time. "I know I haven't been very welcoming to you, Lily. I was scared and angry, and I took it out on you. But I want to be your brother. Your real brother." "You already are," Lily said softly, and hugged him. As the two children embraced in the middle of the gymnasium, Robert felt his phone buzzing insistently. Victoria's name appeared on the screen, and when he answered, her voice was pure venom. "I know where you are, Robert. I know James is with you. You're in violation of court orders, and I'm calling the police." "Actually, Victoria, I think you should know that James has something very interesting to show the court tomorrow." There was a long pause. "What are you talking about?" "Why don't you ask him yourself? He's right here." Robert handed the phone to James, who took a deep breath before speaking to his mother for what might be the last time. "Hi, Mom. I found your files, all of them, and tomorrow I'm going to tell Judge Williams exactly what kind of person you really are." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. When Victoria finally spoke, her voice was no longer the controlled, cultured tone she used in public. It was raw fury, barely contained. "You have no idea what you've done, James. No idea what you've started." "Yes, I do," James replied. "I've stopped you from hurting people I love." The line went dead. As they gathered the evidence and prepared to leave, none of them noticed the black sedan that had been watching the school, or the fact that Victoria Sterling was no longer fighting just for money or custody. Now she was fighting for survival, and desperate people do desperate things. The final confrontation was less than 24 hours away, but Victoria Sterling had one last card to play, one so dangerous that it could destroy them all. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters as dawn broke over the city. Word had leaked about explosive new evidence in the Sterling custody case, and news vans lined the street like vultures waiting for a feast. But inside the imposing building, in Judge Williams' chambers, a very different scene was unfolding. Victoria Sterling sat across from her lawyer, her perfect composure finally cracking as she stared at the documents spread across the conference table. 8 years of carefully constructed lies lay exposed in black and white. The intercepted messages, the deliberate deception, the cold calculation behind every move she'd made. Mrs. Sterling, Judge Williams said quietly, I've been on this bench for 23 years, and I've never seen evidence of such systematic manipulation of both the legal system and a family. Victoria's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. Your Honor, these documents are taken out of context. My son has been manipulated. Your son, the judge interrupted, recorded your phone calls, all of them, including the one where you instructed your lawyer to destroy Robert completely and make sure that bastard child never sees a penny. Across the table, Robert sat with his arm around James, who looked older than his 12 years, but finally, for the first time in months, at peace. Lily held her mother's hand, both of them still processing the magnitude of Victoria's deception. The court finds, Judge Williams continued, that Mrs. Sterling has committed fraud, perjury, and deliberately interfered with Mr. Sterling's parental rights regarding his daughter. Furthermore, the evidence suggests she has been using her son as a weapon in a calculated campaign of emotional and financial manipulation. Victoria's lawyer leaned forward. Your Honor, my client has been under tremendous stress. Your client, Judge Williams cut him off, orchestrated a campaign of lies that separated a father from his daughter for 8 years and traumatized 2 children in the process. The court is not interested in excuses. James stood up, his young voice steady as he addressed the judge. Your Honor, I know she's my mother, but what she did was wrong. My sister deserved to know her father, and my father deserved to know his daughter. I don't want to live with someone who could hurt people like that. Victoria's mask finally shattered completely. James, I did everything for you. Everything I did was to protect you, to secure your future. No, Mom, James said sadly. You did it for money. You did it for control. You never asked what I wanted. You never asked if I wanted a sister, or if I wanted my dad in my life. You just decided what was best for you and called it love. The words hit Victoria like physical blows. For a moment, she looked not like the sophisticated socialite she'd cultivated, but like a broken woman who had lost everything through her own actions. Judge Williams consulted her notes. The court hereby awards full custody of James Sterling to his father, Robert Sterling. Mrs. Sterling will be allowed supervised visitation pending completion of a psychological evaluation. Furthermore, she continued, all previous restraining orders are lifted. Mr. Sterling is free to pursue a relationship with his daughter Lily Martinez without interference. And Mrs. Sterling, you should know that the District Attorney's Office will be reviewing this case for possible criminal charges. Victoria sat in stunned silence as her world collapsed around her. 8 years of planning, manipulation and lies had crumbled in a single morning, destroyed by the very son she'd claimed to be protecting. As they left the courthouse, the press rushed forward with microphones and cameras, but Robert shielded his children from the chaos, his strong arms creating a protective barrier around both Lily and James. Mr. Sterling, what's your response to the allegations? Mr. Sterling, will you be seeking damages? Mr. Sterling. How does it feel to be reunited with your daughter?" Robert paused at the bottom of the courthouse steps, his arms around both his children. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the crowd of reporters. "My response is simple. I've spent 8 years not knowing I had a daughter, and my daughter spent 8 years thinking her father didn't want her. No amount of money, no legal victory can give us back that time. But we have today, and we have tomorrow, and we have the rest of our lives to build the family we should have been all along." He looked down at Lily, who gazed up at him with eyes full of wonder and love. "Lily, I want you to know that every day from now on, you'll wake up knowing you have a father who loves you. And James," he turned to his son, "you'll wake up knowing you have a sister who thinks you're brave and wonderful. And a dad who's proud of the man you're becoming," Robert added, his voice thick with emotion. 6 months later, the Sterling family had found their rhythm. Robert had sold the mansion. "Too many bad memories," he said, and bought a beautiful but comfortable house where Lily could have her own room, painted purple with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Maria had enrolled in nursing school, her tuition paid by the man who had become not just the father of her daughter, but a true friend and partner in raising her. James adapted to his new school remarkably well and surprised everyone by developing a fierce protective streak when it came to his little sister. The first boy, who made fun of Lily's second-hand clothes, found himself facing a very determined 12-year-old who had learned a thing or two about fighting for family. On Father's Day that year, the Lincoln Elementary Gymnasium hosted its annual celebration again. But this time, when they called Lily's name, she stood up proudly with both her father and her big brother beside her. "This is my dad, Robert Sterling," she said, her voice clear and strong. "He teaches me that love is never too late, and that family is worth fighting for." The audience applauded, but Lily wasn't finished. "And this is my brother James. He taught me that being brave sometimes means doing the right thing even when it's hard." As the ceremony continued, Robert looked around the gymnasium, the same place where he'd first sat beside a heartbroken little girl and changed both their lives forever. Sometimes, he reflected, the best families aren't the ones you're born into, but the ones you choose to fight for. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or success or security. It's the simple knowledge that they matter, that they're loved, and that they'll never have to face the world alone again. In the end, Victoria Sterling had been right about one thing. Love really was the most powerful weapon of all. She just never understood that when you use love to heal instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy, it becomes something even stronger. It becomes family.